Sandwich shops are everywhere. Go eat alone quickly. You high school grad.
I had ordered lunch for 70 new employees for the company's induction ceremony, but the manager, a Harvard graduate, changed the order without permission, and mine didn't arrive. Then he said that to me. He even made fun of me for being a high school graduate, laughing with the new employees. As my anger simmered inside me, I finally lost my cool and told the manager and the new employees something. My name is Rick. I'm a 43-year-old employee who recently joined a major company.
Daddy, do your best at work.
Have a good day, honey.
Blessed with a wife and child who cheered me on as I left for work. I was working hard for my family. But one day a male version of a workplace bully showed up to disrupt my daily life.
Is it true you're just a high school graduate? Why is a high school grad working here?
Well, even if you ask me why. The manager, John, asked me that when he approached me. While I was puzzled, John glared at me as if demanding a quick answer. Yes, as you say, I graduated from high school, but...
So it's true. How did a high school grad even get into our company? Most of us here are college graduates. By the way, I graduated from Harvard.
Wow, that's impressive. Upon finding out I was a high school graduate, John looked down on me and casually mentioned he was a Harvard graduate. He seemed to be someone who valued academic background a lot. To avoid any trouble, I walked away from John and returned to my work. But from that day on, John started harassing me.
Do these documents.
Sometimes he dumped documents on me. Other times he made me clean, and even sent me on errands, using me as much as he could.
Are you okay? You look pale. Maybe you should talk to someone.
As the harassment from John continued, it seemed the stress was showing on my face, and my wife was deeply worried. But I shook my head. He's the manager, and I just transferred here, so I don't want to make a fuss.
Even so, I'm worried.
It's okay. I have a plan for when push comes to shove. I reassured my wife like that. Knowing the situation from a few days ago, my wife was probably on edge, worried my health might deteriorate. But giving up over something like this would mean losing my manhood. Well then, I'm off for the day.
Daddy, do your best.
Whether they knew the situation or not, I received cheers from my beloved child, and I headed to work determined not to lose.
Rick, handle these documents today. If you want to get close to a Harvard graduate and manager like me, you have to do this kind of work.
That's right. Leave it to me. Fueled by my family's encouragement, even when John increased my workload again, I took it on with enthusiasm. John, who watched me in astonishment, didn't bother me at all, and I even gained skills. It was a win-win situation for me. Learning that things could change depending on my approach and mindset, I continued to positively handle any harassment from John, turning it into skill development.
Hey, I don't understand this part.
Then, as I grew, other employees started approaching me for help. Instead of asking the angry John, they asked me when they didn't understand something, and I made sure to explain things politely. This part can be improved if you do it this way.
Thank you, Rick. You're so reliable.
Seeing the happy smile of the employee made me happy too. A year passed as I continued doing these tasks, and finally, spring arrived.
Rick, could you order lunch for 70 new employees?
Understood, John. As we were preparing for the entrance ceremony, John asked me that. Of course, I agreed and answered him likewise. There hadn't been any trouble with John recently. So, without much thought, I called the sandwich shop and placed the order. Then, on the day of the entrance ceremony, our company president stepped onto the stage and spoke to the new employees through a microphone.
Congratulations to all the new employees. We are very pleased to welcome 70 new members to our company today. As you become a part of society, we expect you to grow significantly as important personnel in our company, carrying a sense of responsibility and awareness.
With the president's speech ending, the induction ceremony concluded, and it was time for lunch. I saw the delivery car from the sandwich shop arriving, and I started handing out the sandwich boxes to the new employees one by one. I had ordered enough for all of our employees, so as I was handing them out, I noticed that mine was missing. That's strange. I'm sure I ordered enough for everyone. Looking at the receipt I received from the delivery person, I noticed that the number was one less than what I had ordered over the phone. When I immediately asked the delivery person, they told me that there was a change made after my order.
It was a call from your company's manager. He said there were too many sandwich boxes ordered, so he asked to reduce it by one. Didn't you know about this?
Seeing my surprised reaction, the delivery person asked timidly. Coming to my senses, I told them it was fine, and the delivery person cheerfully greeted me and left. Holding the receipt, I went to see John, who was happily eating his sandwich surrounded by the new employees at a prepared table. John, can I have a word with you? I need to talk.
What is it, Rick? Can't you see I'm meeting with the new employees? Read the room, will you?
John smirked at me, having guessed the topic of my conversation. That really ticked me off. Looking around, the new employees, already aware of the situation, started snickering. Still, I wasn't intimidated and spoke up again. I didn't get my lunch. I definitely ordered enough, but the sandwich shop said the order was changed afterward. They said it was you who called. I was entrusted with the order, so I would like an explanation for the change. Suppressing my anger, I calmly conveyed this, but hearing it, John laughed at me even more.
You figured it out quickly, didn't you, high school grad Rick? You wanted to look good in front of the new employees, but it backfired, didn't it?
At that moment, John and the new employees burst out laughing. I had approached it as part of my job and never intended to show off, but it seemed I had fallen right into John's trap.
Too bad for you. All the new employees are on my side. After all, they're all college graduates. There's not a single high school grad among them. They're all better than you.
You're still stuck on academic background, huh?
Of course.
Even as I answered in a low tone, John replied confidently.
Some of the employees here are high school grads like you, and they seem to understand you to some extent. But I won't be fooled. From the perspective of college grads, High school grads do crap work. It's a pity for the excellent college grads.
John's biased view of prioritizing academic background showed no sign of stopping.
That's why, as an interviewer, I didn't accept any high school grads and chose the excellent college grads here. They follow me properly, and they're all loyal and helpful, unlike someone with just a high school diploma.
Despite not arguing with John and following him as an employee, I still seemed inferior to the college grads.
Sandwich shops are everywhere. Go eat alone quickly, you high school grad.
Bringing the topic back to the sandwich, John urged me to leave the room. At that point, I completely lost my cool. Fine. Then all of you, consider your job offers canceled.
Huh?
The new employees, unable to grasp my smiling words immediately, raised their voices in confusion. Their bewilderment made me chuckle. Looking at John, he wore the same dumbfounded expression. I wanted to burst out laughing, but I felt it was necessary to explain things to everyone, so I continued speaking. Didn't you hear me? For those of you who are a bit slow to understand, I'll say it again. I said I'm canceling the job offers of all the new employees here that John selected.
How? What nonsense are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? You're just an employee, and a high school graduate at that. You can't do something like that.
John started laughing again, joined by the new employees.
Are you planning to report this to the president? Who do you think the president will believe? A mere employee or me, the manager?
Of course, the president will believe the mere employee, John.
Suddenly, the president appeared, and everyone turned to look at him. John and the employees were taken aback.
President, why are you here? Did Rick call you?
While everyone was stunned by the president's sudden appearance, John tried to ingratiate himself with the president.
What he's saying is complete nonsense. You shouldn't trust him. If anything, you should fire him. The new employees here are troubled because of him. Right?
John sought confirmation from the new employees. The new employees, along with the other employees, nodded in agreement with John.
But I'm the one who's troubled.
Huh?
After letting out a huge sigh, the president said that, causing John to look confused.
I'm saying that I'd be troubled if Rick were to leave. Rick is my son, and he will take over this company.
Son.
John and the new employees were shocked as they realized the truth about me as revealed by my father, the president. The new employees turned pale, believing my father's words.
I heard you tampered with a lunch order, making sure my son didn't get his lunch.
I was just being considerate, thinking Rick's wife would make him a homemade lunch.
Hearing my father's angry words, John hastily tried to excuse himself. His feeble excuses were obvious and embarrassing to witness. I had never mentioned my wife to John, but the fact that he knew and had investigated gave me chills. I told my wife the company would provide lunch today, so she didn't make me one.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that, Rick.
John apologized awkwardly with a forced smile. It seemed like the matter was resolved, but my father had been listening to the entire conversation between me and John from outside the door, so he knew everything. When I looked at my father, it was clear he wasn't going to let this slide.
John, I already know you've been belittling my son's academic background. You weren't always like this.
Recalling the past, my father began to speak. John used to be someone who earnestly faced his work. However, seeing how John had changed, my father looked genuinely disappointed.
That's why I hired you without hesitation. Even though you graduated from Harvard, you worked hard and climbed the ranks through your efforts, and I believed you'd become a cornerstone of the company. But now, I feel utterly betrayed.
Sir, I'm deeply humbled by your high expectations. But regardless of what your son told you, I've been a reliable leader, as shown by how the new employees follow me. Betrayed, you say? That's preposterous.
John insisted he was doing his job properly. But his anxiety was evident, and he lacked conviction. Looking back at the new employees, they were too shocked to say anything, facing both me and the president. They likely started to realize their own complicity. The new employees followed you not just because you're the manager, right?
What do you mean, Rick?
John's nervousness was apparent as I continued to press. I pulled out an investigation report from inside my suit. I just received the investigation results. It turns out that during your time as an examiner and interviewer, you conducted hostile interviews towards high school graduate applicants.
What?
John was shocked by my words as I calmly read from the report. Ignoring John's reaction, I continued speaking. I obtained testimony from many high school graduate applicants that day. Would you like to hear the statements sent to my phone by the investigators?
No, I don't need that. It's all lies.
In anticipation of such events, I decided to employ investigators around last winter when I was preparing to take over my father's business. These investigators are former detectives, and they work among the employees. It's not a lie. As I firmly declared this, John was shocked to learn that there were former detectives among the employees. He seemed genuinely unable to believe that investigators had been placed without his knowledge. Originally, I wanted to create an environment where all employees could work with peace of mind, which is why I hired investigators. We also plan to set up a consultation office in the future, and we are proceeding with that. I'm sorry that I had to involve the investigators for my own situation right away.
That doesn't matter. Why should a high school graduate be able to jump over me, a Harvard graduate manager, to become the next president? President, aren't you ashamed to favor your own son?
John, his anger rising at my words, now directed his fury at my father, the president. But my father didn't back down, glaring sharply at John.
You're the last person who should be talking about favoritism based on academic background. My son worked at his previous company for decades, intentionally avoiding mine. He did a great job and finally came over to take the baton of my company, and now you dare to disparage him with your narrow-minded view.
By the way, at his previous company, he was the vice president. Do you still think it's unfair for him to become the next president? As my father and I pressed John, he seemed at a loss, realizing he hadn't known this. It's not something I usually brag about unless asked. Saying it myself feels quite embarrassing. No matter how great my background is, I don't use it as a shield. I stated that firmly, leaving John stunned. For someone so fixated on academic background, the fact that I, a high school graduate, had been a vice president elsewhere was likely a severe blow to his pride. But to drive the point home, I spoke up again. I requested the investigation because your behavior was against our company's policy, and all the employees you hired as an interviewer were college graduates. Our company accepts high school graduates without discrimination, as I was well aware. John's face turned pale, clearly not expecting his actions to be exposed. Seeing this, my father cleared his throat and addressed John.
Since you conducted hostile interviews, it's a company scandal. I plan to step down as president and pass the baton to my son. This is 2 years earlier than planned, but my son can handle it. You will also be disciplined accordingly.
John stood in stunned silence, devastated by my father's words. My father then turned his attention to the new employees.
I'm sorry, but you all also showed your disdain for high school graduates. Therefore, we've decided to cancel your job offers.
The new employees, too, fell into despair. Some began to cry and beg my father to reconsider, thinking of their disappointed parents.
President, we're so sorry.
Although it was easy to foresee their tears, I hoped they would take this as an opportunity to reflect on their actions.
Due to the hostile interviews conducted by the interviewer, we deeply regret and apologize to the victims and their guardians. We are truly sorry.
The next day, my father and I explained the situation to the victims and their guardians and apologized. We also announced that the job offers for the college graduates had been revoked and that John had been dismissed. Angry parents yelled at us for the treatment of their children, but we apologized sincerely. Parents naturally want the best for their children. Since this affects their lives, it reinforced my determination to create a better company.
Rick, I entrust the company to you.
My father, looking exhausted, entrusted the company to me. He seemed to blame himself endlessly for the scandal, so I asked him to let me handle it from now on.
I'll take care of Dad.
Thank you, Mom. Contact me if anything happens. With that, I left my parents' house. Fortunately, my mother was there to take care of things at my parents' house, which was a great help. My mother looked distressed seeing my father so exhausted, but she assured me she would take care of him, and I was deeply grateful for that. Meanwhile, John tried to find another job in the same industry but was completely blacklisted and had to take up a different line of work. He now works as a laborer at a construction site, doing hard physical labor, far removed from his previous role as a manager. For someone like John, who had grown complacent in his managerial position, physical labor might be the best way to rebuild his character. As for me, I successfully took over the company from my father, and when I revealed to the employees that I had joined to become the next president, they welcomed me warmly. With both my father and John suddenly gone, the employees had been anxious, but they were relieved when they understood that I, the president's son, would take over. The cancellation of the job offers for the new employees was successfully carried out, and the company conducted new tests and interviews. I, as the president, also attended, making decisions on the spot along with other examiners and interviewers. A few months later, with the inclusion of the new hires, the company we rebuilt together surpassed its previous performance. We established a consultation office where employees could discuss any issues at any time. And as the president, I also listened and helped find solutions. The investigators continued their work without revealing their identities.
Thanks to you, President Trick, I was able to reconcile with my supervisor. Thank you so much.
Hearing direct thanks from an employee who had resolved a conflict made me happy. I wondered if things might have been different if I had talked to someone about my issues with John when I was still an employee. Thinking that I still had a long way to go as a president, I put the past behind me. The present reality, built by my efforts and those of the employees, is something that shouldn't be denied. With that in mind, I continued to strive for further development of the company as its president.